So I am David Thompson, Vice President of Public Policy at the National Council of Nonprofits. We are delighted that the thousands of you have joined us. So let me give you a hearty good afternoon, good morning, and aloha, depending on where in the country you are. We have folks from all 50 states, all types of nonprofits, all sizes of nonprofits. Very rewarding to see the participation. And let's get into the show. We're going to be covering, I should point out, the primary focus of the call is talking with nonprofits about how you can access a specific fund within the American Rescue Plan Act. That is the state and local fiscal recovery funds. It started off as $350 billion, as my colleague Jessica Mendieta will tell you, and there's still money available for you. So we're going to talk about the background, your eligibility, and some successful examples. Then we're going to talk about identifying and pursue how you can turn the idea into reality, and then do some Q&A and some final remarks. And opening our conversation here is remarks from Deputy Secretary Wally Adeyemo, who is the #2 official at Treasury and is the Chief Operating Officer. And we welcome you. I'm hoping you're seen on the screen. I can't quite tell, but welcome, sir. I'm sure all of you on the call have seen his name in news releases, policy pronouncements, and engagement. He's a very active fellow. Mr. Deputy Secretary, you seem to be involved in just about every financial project and program that affects the charitable nonprofit sector. So we're watching you because you're doing great work on behalf of the sector. Thank you. Your bio will be shared again later when the follow-up email comes out, but I wanted to highlight a couple of items because we don't have time to go to do his bio and then give him time to talk with us. But he was very active in the Obama administration. He's extremely active and successful in the Biden administration. In between those two, he was the very first president of the Obama Foundation, which is something of great interest to this group. And he has served on numerous boards of nonprofits working to help low-income working people succeed, as well as on the board of a faith-based affordable housing initiative here in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm being intentionally brief with my introduction so that you have as much time as you can to share what you will. So please, the digital floor is yours.
Well, David, let me say thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for inviting me here today to speak with you. As you mentioned, I am very familiar with the important work that nonprofits do all over this country, having been a board member, a recipient of their services, and also in my time getting a chance to run nonprofits. As David mentioned, my name is Wally Adeyemo, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Department, which makes me the Chief Operating Officer of the department, helping to make sure that the strategy the Secretary and the President laid out is actually implemented on a daily basis. And that's why I'm excited to join you in conversation today to think about how we can help American Rescue Plan, state and local fiscal recovery funds invest in their workforces and expand their communities' housing supply. I'm particularly excited to speak with you all because I know that nonprofits are crucial partners to state and local governments in the work that they do. As we approach the final stretch of this program, which ends at the end of 2024, nonprofit partners are critical to last mile implementation to ensure that this historic investment of federal resources will have a transformative impact in the communities you care about across the country. This is also a timely conversation because, as I mentioned, self-recipients or state and local fund recipients need to obligate their funds by December 31st, 2024, which is the deadline set by Congress. For many states and local governments, we're heading into what will be their final budget season before that deadline, and that's why they could use your help in terms of thinking about how they can use these resources to create opportunities in your communities. Treasury is, of course, the agency that I get to run, is committed to doing what we can to support localities as they deploy this money efficiently, effectively, and responsibly. In my remarks today, I want to outline a few areas where we're especially focused, where we think that these funds can have transformative impacts. The first, of course, is that the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which were all passed by Congress and the president is working to implement, are expanding economic opportunity to urban and rural communities in every corner of the United States. And the state and local funds that currently exist are investing in workforce development, which are making those opportunities available to all Americans who need training and those who need to be upskilled, whether they have a college degree or not. State and local resources are creating opportunities to launch or scale on the investments in workforce development in communities across the country. Investments that are being made by nonprofits or across the country in partnerships with state and local governments. Our focus is on ensuring that all workers benefit from the historic economic growth and job creation we've seen over the last 3 years, and ensure multiple pathways to middle-class jobs for all Americans. We've already seen communities budget nearly $13 billion of the state and local funds to create jobs and opportunities for workers in those communities. These include efforts like expanding registered apprenticeships and credentialing programs in sectors we expect to be critical in the decades ahead, from construction and electrification to nursing and teaching. Communities are also partnering with nonprofits like your members to facilitate job training, fund supportive services like childcare, home care, and transportation assistance, and offer counseling to help people enter or re-enter the workforce. For example, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a place I know well because it's close to where I went to law school, they're using fiscal recovery funds to partner with nonprofits to offer job certification, host job fairs, recruit and connect individuals to apprenticeships, programs, and more. I want to encourage all of you to think about how you can partner with your cities, with your states, with the remaining recovery funds to ensure the greatest impact for your local workforces going forward. The second issue I want to talk to you about is the need for more housing supply in our economy. Often people focus on the affordable housing challenge, but we have a challenge in terms of we're just not built enough housing in this country over the last few years, especially coming out of the pandemic, which is why we're encouraging recipients to use their state and local award funds to build and improve access to affordable housing. In July 2022, Treasury announced new flexibilities and tools to make it easier for Treasury funds and those who receive them to use their federal funds to invest in long-term affordable housing projects, including increasing flexibility to fully finance certain long-term affordable housing loans. We also plan to release updated guidance in the coming weeks that further expands recipients' flexibilities to invest state and local funds in projects to increase housing supply in their communities. Nonprofits can play a critical role as partners in constructing and operating affordable housing. For example, in Travis County, Texas, they're spending $35 million of state and local funding to partner with nonprofits on a collaborative that will build affordable units specifically intended for unhoused people. The key here is that this funding can not only help in terms of constructing new housing, but also preserving housing in order to make sure that we have as much housing as possible in the country to support our affordability goals. Another area where we think that more can be done is with state and local funds is with regard to supporting the work that we're doing on the Inflation Reduction Act. The Treasury Department's pandemic recovery efforts delivered real results and contributed to the fastest and fairest recovery in history, creating a blueprint for equitable implementation of other legislation, including the Inflation Reduction Act. The National Council of Nonprofits can play an important role in ensuring that nonprofits understand the various tools and benefits provided in the IRA, most notably direct pay provisions. With direct pay, and I want to say this very clearly, tax-exempt entities such as nonprofits and those of you in this virtual room can receive a tax-free cash payment from the Internal Revenue Service equivalent to the amount that can be claimed as a tax credit by for-profit institutions. As a result, nonprofits can advance clean energy transitions such as installation of solar panels at much reduced price points. Clean energy installation or energy efficiency retrofits would be natural components of an affordable housing project, as those investments will generate ongoing cost saving while also helping to preserve our planet. As communities work to maximize the impact of legislation like the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act, the Treasury Department is doing what we can to lift up promising examples and best practices from governments engaged in this important work. But the thing I want all of you to hear clearly is we know that Treasury cannot do this alone. I know that many of you already engage with your local governments to encourage them to invest state and local funds in affordable housing, workforce development, and other projects that will help support their local communities for years to come. I want to ask you to redouble those efforts, to think creatively and innovatively about ways that we can use this funding to help the people in the communities you care about to reach the goals that they have for themselves and also for their communities. So let me end by saying a word of thanks to you again for joining me here today and for all the work you are doing to help build our country and invest in its people.
Thank you so much. Those are great examples, great insights, and we appreciate it. I am told you'd be willing to answer a question or two.
I'm happy to do that.
Hence the slide. First one. Now, this first one may seem silly, but if I say it, not all my nonprofit colleagues are going to believe me. If I say it, not all of my friends in government are going to believe me. So let me ask you directly. Are charitable nonprofits eligible for state and local fiscal recovery funds?
Yes. They can working through the states, they can be recipients of those funds. And in many state and local governments, as I stated with examples, they're partnering with nonprofits who often have more flexibility and are able to be more innovative going forward. So I think from our standpoint, it is great for nonprofits to help state and local governments take and deploy these funds into the communities that matter.
Thanks. There's confusion about the upcoming deadline, and we're going to go into greater detail, but I wanted to raise with you, do nonprofits under contracts to do projects using these funds have to finish the projects by the end of this year?
So I think what I'll do is I'll leave this question to a more detailed analysis in terms of what it means to be under contract. The key thing from our standpoint is the money has to be obligated by the end of 2024. We put out a recent rule that talked about what the definition of obligation is, but fundamentally the key point that I want to make is that we really do have a deadline here that's been set by Congress. We don't have the ability to adjust that. And in order for us to meet that deadline, we need to be in a position where these state and local governments go from having the money to budgeting it, to obligating it this year in order to make sure that it has a real impact in these communities. You can be helpful to your state and local governments by both prodding them to remind them that you're here to be their partners, but also helping to propose innovative ways that you can work with them to do this work going forward.
So full freedom to nag them. Appreciate that coming from the top. What happens to the money if it has to be obligated by the end of this year? What happens to that money if it doesn't get obligated?
Money comes back to the Treasury Department and it goes back to the Fisc. So it comes back to us to ensure that it is put back and being able to be useful. But fundamentally, our goal here is to think about the impact of the pandemic in the communities that you're all working in, and to remind ourselves that just because the public health emergency has ended when it comes to the pandemic, it doesn't mean that we've addressed all of the impacts from the pandemic or put us in a better position to prepare ourselves for the future. And that's why we want to make sure that each one of the local communities and states are thinking innovatively and creatively about how they can make investments in their communities to help ensure that they are prepared for the future and that you're making investments that respond to the challenges that the pandemic has either exposed or has created. So this is why we're having these conversations now. But ultimately, if the funding isn't used, it returns back to the Treasury.
So it's a use it or lose it by the end of this year. Then with that news, it seems like we should have a national webinar to get the word out.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for you and your team for all you're doing to help turn these dollars into real impact in communities. And thank you for your service. Appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. And thank all of you for all the work that you do in local communities throughout our country. Ultimately, as I said in my remarks, the federal government can't do it alone. We have to do it in partnership with community groups like the ones that are represented in this virtual room. So thank you for your service. Take care.
Very kind. Thank you. Good day. Now, We do appreciate those remarks. And we're now going to go to the overview of the state and local fiscal recovery funds program. In this, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jessica Mendieta, who's policy associate, has been here for a couple of years with the National Council of Nonprofits. If you've read much of the material from the National Council of Nonprofits, it's either been written by or researched by Jessica. The program itself, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund program, was brand new to everyone. No one had ever seen anything like this before. This is a once in a lifetime experience. Jessica joined us and rolled up her sleeves and has become a genuine expert on the law, the nuances, and the data. So we've asked her to give us a background on the law itself. And Jessica, just tell me when you need to change pages.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. So we like to start with the bottom line up front. So the first thing that all nonprofits need to know is that when it comes to the state and local fiscal recovery funds, there isn't a universal request for proposal. I think this is something that requires a lot of advocacy and can be tailored to your needs and your mission. The next thing to know is that charitable nonprofits are eligible for funding, and there are still funds available no matter what you might hear. So kind of getting into the program. Just a quick background on the state and local fiscal recovery fund. So what are these funds? Altogether, $350 billion went to states, localities, tribes, and territories. And in the American Rescue Plan Act, Congress expressly declared that governments may use their allocations, also their funds, to provide assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or to aid impacted industries. So this really sets the tone for all the materials and everything that we talk about when it comes to this program. And nonprofits are 501c3 tax-exempt organizations. So these are all the allocations, basically the funds that went to the states. And this is a combination of all the state, city, county, municipal funding. And we combine this to show that there is not one single source for these funds. If it's not the state level, then it's with your township, your county, or your city. So this is just kind of a way to put everything together in context. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is mostly for folks to refer to later on, some of the more technical terms when it comes to the local fiscal recovery funds. So recipients are all the state, territory, local, and tribal governments that receive these funds. And subrecipients, if one of the recipients chooses to enter an agreement to complete a project on behalf of the government, that's when the nonprofit will become a subrecipient. But and we'll get into this more later, beneficiaries or folks that receive more direct assistance would not count as such. And just a little bit more in the technical terms, we already talked about the allocations, basically the funding, obligations, the written agreements to spend these funds, and the expenditures. So obligation, I just see them as basically the signatures for the funds, and expenditures are the completed projects. And where we are now, as mentioned, right now, 2024 is a very big year because we have until December 31st to make sure that all recipients make a written agreement to spend these funds. Otherwise, that goes back to the Treasury Department. And once that's done, basically all the signatures are signed, everything's crossed off. We have until 2026 to spend those funds. So right now, there's a lot happening, but we want folks to know that there's still time to make a plan and to secure these funds. But how do we know that nonprofits are eligible for the state and local fiscal recovery funds? In the final rule, the Department of Treasury made it very clear and references several hundred times in the final rule that nonprofits are eligible for funds. This is the overview, so it's a very short version. And on page 23, you can see that it says eligible nonprofits are those that experience negative economic impacts, and recipients can consider decreased revenue, increased costs, any challenges covering payroll, rent, and other operating costs. So one thing that we've also talked about at the national level is the workforce shortage crisis. A lot of nonprofits are having challenges with recruitment and retention. So odds are, if we were in an audience and we were to ask how many nonprofits are having these challenges, everyone would raise their hands, which means that everyone is eligible for the state and local fiscal recovery funds. And using these funds, how can recipients partner with nonprofits? we kind of have this broken down into two buckets. The first bucket are as recipients of relief, otherwise known as beneficiaries. And it's a very common example. This usually would look like a nonprofit relief fund, a direct grant. And for the nonprofit, that means that there is less paperwork and fewer reporting requirements. Now, as providers of relief, you enter a written agreement with the recipient to complete a project, and that's when you have more detailed reporting requirements. But these two are perfectly reasonable ways to spend those funds, to partner with governments and other recipients, and to make sure that the funds are allocated and spent by the deadlines.
Now, thank you, Jessica. That was crisp and clean. Let's go to some examples, some real world examples to prove that we're not making this up. First off is we're going to talk about workforce development, and allow me to introduce my friend Laura Wally. Laura's Vice President of Government Affairs for Goodwill Industries International. There's a bio that you will see when a little bit later when you get the follow-up email. But something that's not in the bio that I'm going to brag about is that we probably wouldn't be having this webinar but for the work of Laura, because she was a key player in the group of us that were working on this legislation, the American Rescue Plan Act, to get the words "and nonprofits" inserted. First draft, we weren't included, so it was businesses and families. The work of Laura helped lead on behalf of the nonprofit sector got Congress to insert the words "and nonprofits" so that we have access. We didn't, so we are eligible. We're not entitled to these funds, which is why we're having the program. But Laura, let me publicly thank you for that. Now, everyone on the call, you probably know Goodwill stores, particularly toward the end of December or when you're moving. That's only a little part of what they do. I'm very impressed with the work of Goodwill Industries. There are 155 community-based autonomous organizations, meaning they do what the community needs, not what Laura tells them. And they're also in a bunch of countries. But as Laura will share, Goodwill is a major trainer of individuals for jobs that need filling. So they're part of the solution to the workforce shortage that Jessica just mentioned, and they're part of the solution to individuals getting their lives back together and moving communities forward. So I'm delighted, Laura, that you're here, and looking forward to hear how some of your local Goodwills have taken advantage of these funds to accomplish good stuff.
Well, thanks, David. I'm happy to be here. And first, let me just say that the work on behalf of the sector was with the sector. We couldn't have been successful with getting this type of funding and a lot of others during the height of the pandemic without the support of the National Council as well. So as part of the nonprofit sector, we're extremely lucky to have folks like David and Jessica and the other resources and expertise that National Council provided and continues to provide. So thanks for convening stuff like this to cut through all of the wonky acronyms and text and regs and everything, to cut to the chase about this particular funding opportunity. David did a great job with the overview. That means he's heard me on enough calls describe Goodwill that we're more than just our stores. Our most revenue comes in actually in October in our stores, though, because people are Halloween shopping for costumes. That said, though, we do use the revenues to fund workforce development and job training programs for people with barriers to employment. In the US, there are 149 local Goodwills. So that means when you go to your local Goodwill and you're shopping or donating or visiting our workforce job training centers, you're just at that one Goodwill. They have their own service territories, but that type of structure allows them to design programming to meet the very specific needs of their communities. So we had several Goodwills that have taken advantage of the state and local fiscal relief funds, or SISLFR for short, which is a fun acronym that I think we've invented. But they, for example, out of those multiple that received the funding, I'm going to run through 6. that utilized it specifically for purposes of workforce development and job creation. In Nevada, the Goodwill used it for creating certified nursing assistants and medical assistants and having what they called industry sprints. So they worked with some partners in the community to design these job training programs. In Southwest Florida, there is a micro enterprise technical assistance that was provided to folks in the community that either needed to stabilize their businesses or wanted to start new businesses. And those who enrolled in the program were given mentors and take classes on how to start a business and keep it going, classes on cash flow, fiscal responsibility, etc. In North Carolina, the local Goodwill not only partnered with the city, but also with Forsyth Tech for sustainable co-located workforce training system to be created. Louisiana, they used it for summer intern program for high school students so they can have paid jobs as well. California focused on what was called the Next Gen Workforce Program. That was a partnership with the city as well, targeted towards youth. And lastly, in Maryland, they actually had an interesting switch where they have initially applied planning to use the funding for housing for a certain population that needed housing then while they were quarantining, and luckily needed to shift that. The usage was no longer needed for that purpose. So they went back to the city and council for a change of purpose there, and then utilized a little bit of the funding to recruit career navigators and case managers that then ultimately helped people with their job training as well. So that's just a high level overview of some real world examples, though I would just stress that in the Deputy Secretary's remarks, he mentioned the word innovate and innovative several times. That's what Goodwills did. They had an opportunity, and you all have an opportunity to be creative, think outside of the box. They want to get rid of this money. We don't need it going back to the feds. So come up with ideas on how we can put it to use in communities.
Thanks, Laura. And that's a key point. That is the point of this call, is that we're not telling you this is the one way. There is not one way. Nonprofits are uniquely suited to take these funds and run with them and do good stuff because, let's face it, we're the most innovative sector of the entire economy. Okay. God bless us. Thank you. Let's move on to the front from the front lines. Housing. The Deputy Secretary was talking a fair amount about housing, and we have an expert who's joining us. Collen Robinson is the CEO of the Clallam County, Washington Habitat for Humanity. Born in Baltimore, been way out there for going on 30 years. She's the CEO, has been since 2017, and has had considerable success in drawing attention to the affordable housing needs in rural areas. She'll talk about how, to use the term Laura used, CISL-FIRF, we do like that acronym, how CISL-FIRF, state and local fiscal recovery funds, has impacted the mission of the local habitat. But when you see her bio, I want you to notice the last item. I want to highlight that Collen embodied values of, just her personality embodies values of community engagement. She is no silo unto herself. Collen is on just about every board and community, every business and community board in her region, either as the chair or the secretary or something. I don't know how she has time. I suspect her relationships with so many in her community give a hint as to why the examples she's about to share have been so successful, which is a major tip for advancing your advocacy, is engagement and relationships. Collen.
Yes.
What can you share with us? Welcome.
Awesome. So for a little bit of background, there are 1,100 Habitat affiliates across the United States. We're in all 50 states and 70 countries around the world. 2/3 of our affiliate network is rural, and not every affiliate has a Habitat store. We only have about 400 Habitat stores out of those 1,100 affiliates. So next slide, please. For a little bit of context, my affiliate service area is about 2.5 hours west of Seattle. When I tell that to people who are not from here, they're like, there's nothing west of Seattle, but I assure you there is. The Olympic Peninsula, we actually look over at Victoria, Canada. And our population is about 78,000 people in the county, which is my service area. Next slide. So in March of 2020, we all learned about a national pandemic and how it was going to impact us. For Habitat, the impact was pretty immediate and pretty severe. We had 2 houses that we had selected families, we had under construction, and a sheet of OSB plywood went from roughly $22 a sheet to $95 a sheet within a very short amount of time. Those of you that are not builders, you use OSB for cladding the outside of your house, for the roof, for the flooring. It's used for lots of things. And the price was exorbitant. And the board came together and realized that our budget would not withstand building 2 homes at that rate of increase in supplies, in addition to supply chain issues, even trying to get simple things. So I was made aware through our TV and, on the wider level that there was ARPA funding. There is this American Rescue Plan Act funding that's coming. You have to show a decrease in first quarter of 2020. So I said to my board, I'm going to ask the county for money to help offset the cost of this second house that we're trying to build. You can see from the timeline there that they came through with that first 100,000. We became a subrecipient. We signed a subrecipient agreement with Clallam County, who had received, I want to say, just around $7 million. So that was our first one. We were successful. They gave us the full 100,000, and then we had to turn in invoices, canceled checks, prove how we spent that 100,000. So next slide. This funding, we asked the city of Port Angeles once we were successful with Clallam County. So I have 3 city jurisdictions and 1 county jurisdiction, all of your jurisdictions were awarded funding in some form or another. Some more than others. It was based on population and lots of things that are above my pay grade, but everyone was awarded some funding. So I went to the city of Port Angeles. I think we can all agree we're not going to build our way out of our current housing crisis, but we need to really help to preserve the aging housing stock that we have right now. So I went to the city of Port Angeles and I said, would you give us $100,000 for our repair program and aging in place, which is, as it seems, it's for people who are aging and want to remain in their homes. City of Port Angeles said, yes, we would love to support you in this endeavor and help our aging housing stock here in the city. And so we have been spending that 100,000, not the least of which was on this beautiful roof for this lovely home that you see in this picture. And then finally, in February of 2023, I sit on a housing solutions committee for our county, and it's run by Clallam County commissioners. And I was told they had $750,000 left of use or lose ARPA funding that was designated for affordable housing. So I went to them and I asked for $500,000. The way that I did all 3 of these asks, there's no grant application. There's no online thing to figure out. The money was new. People didn't know what they were going to ask for, what they were going to require. So I did something really simple called an executive summary. I discussed what the problem was. I discussed what the funding would be used for and how it would positively impact us. So in February, I went to the county, asked for 500,000 of the 750, and it was a long road to hoe for many reasons, but January 2nd of this year, they awarded us the $500,000. And not only did they award it, but because their experience with us the first time around with the first 100,000 went so well that they're just gifting us the money and we show how we're spending it. So I know from my other Habitat colleagues that a lot of times what they're requiring is you spend the money and then you dip in. It's earmarked for you, but you have to dip in, you have to wait for it to be processed by the jurisdiction, you have to wait for the jurisdiction to send you a check. If it's a small jurisdiction and somebody's on vacation, then you are just out of luck until they come back from vacation. So we were very grateful to the county for awarding us. We have a 50 home project coming up in Squim, and that's what this last $500,000 was for infrastructure. And then last slide, this is actually Hillary, that home that we had to put on pause. She's center in front of the front door. She has two very nice young men, and we were so grateful to be able to finish her house and get her and her boys moved in and out of substandard housing and into home ownership. So I think that was all the things that I had.
Colleen,
And I
that
kept it
was
to 7
impressive.
minutes.
Colleen, I'm tempted to hit pause and replay what you just said, because you just answered. We have 150 questions that have come in. I think you just answered a good 75 or 80 of them. Key points. It's not one and done. You can go back to the same entity. You can go to several entities to accomplish many things. How do you find out? You ask. You show up. You participate. You are already a contributing member in the community, and people know and trust you, so you're able to move forward. All of those things inure to the benefit of your nonprofit. If you don't have the background and so forth that Colleen already had, I suspect you already have the goodwill in the community. You already have the mission that people respect. So it's, I might be taking some of the thunder away from Jessica, who's going to be talking next about those specific questions. We've received over 700 questions before as people registered, and then we've received a good 150, 160 as we've been talking. Some of them are very similar. So let's go to some of the recurring questions. I'm going to ask Jessica to answer, but the highfalutin is remaining funds of nonprofits, but get to the meat of it is, I've been told the money's already been spent. Is that true? Were they lying to me? Jessica.
Well, there have been a few different variations of the final rule that have come out since 2022. And so maybe at the time, a year or two ago, the answer was yes, the funds have been obligated, but things change for one reason or another. So how do we know there are funds available still? Starting with revenue replacement. But one of the options, especially for smaller recipients in terms of funding, was to just put the funding into revenue replacement. So right now there are more, I guess, optimistic, projections when it comes to budgets. So there's more funding to be allocated than we realize. Something else that could happen is that maybe there was a program where there was some sort of maybe 10 million and the project only used 8 million of that. So that remaining 2 million could then be put back into a different program or basically re-obligated. And so that's one way to know that nonprofits can access that. And sometimes a project gets canceled.
Jessica, while we were seeing an email popped up for me, I wanted to share. I don't know if it's breaking news or not, but Nevada discovered they hadn't spent all their money. So the legislature decided, let's put all this money into nonprofits. So they are in the process of creating a pool. They had money, they thought they had spent it all, they hadn't spent it all. And now they are creating a pool that goes direct. They're taking the rest of it and spending it on nonprofits. And it's a developing issue in the state. I don't have more details, but that's just an example that, they thought it was all gone. It wasn't. So in this case, they turned around and are investing it in nonprofits. I'm sorry, back to you.
So strike while the iron's hot. So why is the iron hot right now? There's a lot of budgets that are being worked right now at various levels. So back to, I guess, the three main items as to why we know there are funds remaining: revenue replacement. Some programs didn't use all the funding, so this can be re-obligated. And some projects were canceled, so those funds still need to be obligated. So the bottom line from this slide is that with the approaching deadline of December 31st, recipients only need to sign any kind of rent agreement with the charitable nonprofit and the obligation duties met. So we don't want those funds to go back to Treasury. We want those funds to go to communities. And I think we'll go to the next slide.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sources to track. This is the most recurring question. Where do I go to find out what money's still available? You're going to answer for every community and everybody on the call, right?
We'll see. So how do we know where the money is? A lot of the recipients, especially the larger ones like states and some of the cities and counties, they have a website that shows where the funds have been obligated and how they've been spent. And some of them are more thorough than others in showing the impact, the categories, priorities, kind of like a one-stop shop for finding out where the money is. However, we know that, again, this is a program that is very new to so many folks, especially local governments, and it's not possible to always find that one-stop shop kind of dashboard. So another option is there is a pandemic oversight dashboard, and it's interactive. So folks can see based on each state how much money has been obligated, who's benefited, and it kind of shows you a breakdown of the projects and kind of how much each recipient has. And so that one requires a little bit more math on the user's end to know, kind of gauge how much money is left. But that's another option. And we've also shared.
Will there be links to these in the follow-up information?
Yes. And we'll also link to these two dashboards. One is at the local level and one is at the state level to kind of show how much money is left. So at the local level, they estimate that maybe 85% of the funds have been obligated. But again, that's just based on data from maybe June. So
85% would mean there are 20, 30, 40, $50 billion still left.
Give or take, use those numbers to your advantage. It might seem like most of it is gone, but there really is a lot left. But
okay, they already saw it, but what happens if you just can't find it online?
Well, Colleen really answered that question much better than I ever could, because when in doubt, just use the phone. I mean, that's an old school one. I mean, now we use cell phones, but either way, I mean, just pick up the phone and ask, hey, there are funds available. How can we work together?
And that's the point of relationships. How do I know what to ask for or what to propose? So the individual knows there's money available. What do they do?
Because we know there isn't a universal application for these funds, we have seen some recurring challenges and how to overcome them. So we would kind of narrow it down to the first challenge would be that there's a lack of information available about the program. Because it's new, it's very hard to kind of have like a FAQ or a guide. But as we said, you can always point to the final rule, the reports that we publish and that others have as well, and some examples. You just heard a few from the workforce development and housing perspective, but this can apply to really any kind of issue area like arts and education, childcare, whatever you work in. Another challenge that has come up is that there is maybe this fear around unsustainability. So we give you this funding, you're going to come back in a few years and ask for more. But a lot of the programs really are one-time nature of funds. As we said, the pandemic brought about a lot of emergencies. So with that, I think folks have said that they've used this to kind of help cover payroll, other one-time projects. So that has been really helpful. Sometimes local dynamics and relationships, maybe there's some misunderstanding around the work that nonprofits do and their eligibility. So you can always go to your state association of nonprofits for more resources. There are many coalitions that have come together and secure funds together. I think advocacy has really grown a lot over the last few years because nonprofits came together to secure these funds, especially working around different issue areas. And they've also worked with community foundations to secure these funds. Other challenges may come up, but there's always a strategic plan, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And so the main tools for advocacy, starting with demonstrated public support for your nonprofit, kind of things that you can put together. You do annual reports, you engage donors, you have a lot of information and data around your nonprofit's work and who supports it. Don't be scared to engage, the people that you work with, your peers, your donors, your board members especially. They could be your greatest champions in helping you put together all the work that you do and sending it to the local decision makers. And to strategic plans, a lot of recipients have shown budget frameworks. They're giving a lot of speeches like state of the state, state of the city. There are many strategic plans, and just ways to show their priorities for the year. So if your nonprofit's work aligns with those priorities, that's all the more reason to go to them. If it doesn't, use that as an opportunity to show them the work that you do and how those funds can make a difference in your community.
Jessica, may I share? A few years ago, our network was talking to, we invited the mayor of Cornell, New York to speak to us. And his answer to, well, how do we tailor ourselves, or how do we get the attention? His advice was, go back to the newspaper and find out what the mayor of your community ran on, what the campaign theme was. And then if you're able to, tailor your messaging, because if he or she is promising to deliver X, and you are the deliverer of X, you're going to get your automatic in and getting the attention and proceeding, because you're going to make them look good. So just working the system to your advantage. Sorry.
All good. So taking those materials and taking the work that you do, you can put that together in a document, and that could be the template for your the substitute for the request for proposal, and not have to, basically the lack of a request for proposal can be used to your advantage. Just because there isn't one, you can just create one yourself, and that gives you all the more advantage to secure these funds. And yeah, there's also an option working with philanthropic partners.
Maybe we'll come back to that in the questions.
And so just to kind of put everything back together, how do we know that nonprofits can secure the funds? There's the final rule. The report that we publish has a lot of examples from around the country and just other tools that can be helpful in securing that ask. And state associations of nonprofits, they also have a lot of resources, and they can help your nonprofit secure those funds as well.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's go to Q&A and bring up all of our panelists. Did you know you were a panelist? We have bunches of questions. I've been trying to monitor them and listen to your comments, and I may not have monitored as well because your comments were so good. So thank you. Let me open with one that I know everyone's still pondering, is how do you identify what money is available? Can we maybe, Collen, can you give us a frontline answer to that?
Much like Jessica said, just call your jurisdiction and ask. They have to have a CFO or a accounts payable department. And if they don't know to the penny when you call, then I would highly recommend following up with an email to that person asking for, and then you have a paper trail. So, hey, we had a great phone conversation, just following up on how much ARPA funding is left. But basically your shortest answer, although I appreciated the resources Jessica shared, is going to be calling your local jurisdiction and asking them.
Terrific. Thank you. Either of you? Good. Laura, I didn't warn you I was going to ask this, but earmarks.
Always works out well.
Earmarks are a thing here in DC. The federal government, Congress allows nonprofits and local governments to seek directed funding. Do you see a similarity between ARPA, these funds, and pursuing earmarks? And if you've done one, you have the skills for the other?
Yes. So earmarks, for those who aren't familiar, the term du jour is that congressionally directed funding or community project funding. Basically, it's a specific line item in your appropriations bills for a certain project. There's a lot of rules around that, but it's similar in the fact to the point made earlier around being innovative. There aren't a whole lot of rules right now around uses for the state and local funds that we're talking about today. So you can come up with your dream project, come up with how much it costs, use the links that Jessica sent you and do the backwards math to see what money's left, and then bring it to your county officials, your governor's office, to your mayor and council. Bring it to everyone, because the worst they say is no. At the minimum, you've planted the seed, you're building the relationships, you're telling them what you would like to do and seeing if they can partner with you in making this happen.
Thank you. I think lots of folks have been told no, there's no money available, or they won't, or some officials won't tell them. I'm in no way trying to bash any government officials. They are our partners in this, and they're in this with us. So only positive things there. Some counties, some places are more reticent to share the information. Others are quick to share, more transparent. And it sure does seem that it's changing and everyone's trying to catch up. And with that deadline coming of December 31st, 2024, they're really making sure there are no pennies and coins lying on the floor. So you may have been told no or not gotten a call last week, but as they're running the numbers, they're discovering, oh, we need to spend this. So
If I
David,
could
I
just
just wanted to
early and
underscore,
mention,
often.
oh, go ahead, Colleen.
I was just going to mention that leverage is important to a lot of funders. And being able to say we secured 100,000 of ARPA funding, or we secured $500,000 of ARPA funding as you're going for other funding is really impactful. So there, whoever your funder is that you're asking, and we were also awarded a community funded project through Representative Kilmer's office for that same 50 home community. And so having that leverage is important, and telling a story. They can read all of the spreadsheets from Excel and your budget and what you spent it on. But if you're able to craft a really good story about why this is important, what your project is doing, what service that you offer, if you're able to tell that story, that's what they remember, these reviewers that sit and read all of these different applications, for lack of a better word. So tell a good story is my recommendation.
Cool. Laura?
Yeah, I would just underscore the point you were making, David, where when Jessica showed the map, every state, red, blue, purple, received these funds. And what lawmakers, particularly those who are up for re-election at the end of the year, are going to be looking for are ways to tout how they've helped their communities. And if this money goes back to the feds, it's a bad look for everyone around.
Thanks.
And to the leveraging piece too that Colleen mentioned, I saw in the chat, there's a few questions around if you've received other types of federal funding, whether it was PPP, ERC, et cetera, can you use this as well? You can. And if you've received that other funding, I think you can leverage that and say, we received this other and it helped us and we were good stewards of this resource, et cetera. So leverage all of that.
Thanks for bringing that up. I want to come back to the role of philanthropy, but directly on that question, lots of questions about the Employee Retention Tax Credit, ERC or ERTC. And there is no limit, no restriction, there's no overlap. The Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, CISL-FERF, are freestanding and unique. Doesn't matter whether you participate in any of the other programs at all, there is no restriction there. So you can apply for CISL-FERF. You can apply a second, third, or 10th time like Colleen did, and there's no reason at all to be shy or reticent. Now, on the question of ERTC, it's not a topic of this conversation. It's pending legislation in the area, and lots of folks are still waiting on ERTC checks or processing. That's the Treasury Department, that's the IRS, which is a subset of the Treasury Department, and there's no overlap between the people working. I'm not aware of any challenge on the ERC or ERTC that relates to CISL-FERF or vice versa. The same is true with Paycheck Protection Program, the Shuttered Stages Program, any of the other things. Those are separate and unique. That's different. That's the CARES Act and other things. So if you were told no before or yes before on any of those, doesn't matter. You're still eligible in almost all cases for the CISL-FERF, State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. Now on philanthropy, Jessica had a quick slide on the subject, but Colleen and Laura and Jessica too, could you maybe throw in do you have any additional thoughts on the role that philanthropy can have? Colleen, you talked about getting the CISL-FERF funding. Sorry, folks, for using the acronym, but it's still fun to say. Getting the CISL-FERF funding is a way of leveraging to get philanthropy to support you. How about the other way around? Where are there ways for philanthropy to help you get CISL-FERF money so that the local governments leverage the support of philanthropy? Any thoughts there?
Well, we had 13 letters of support from our nonprofit community, as well as our local hospital that isn't able to hire staff from out of the area because there's no affordable housing for those staff people to move here. One of our biggest employers wrote a letter explaining the struggle of not having affordable workforce housing and not being able to grow their business. So certainly use your resources. We have a very collaborative nonprofit community here, and lots of letters of support definitely help. Back to that, what I said about telling the story, expressing the need, and how you're going to meet that need with this funding.
Jessica, I know you've got some other ways that foundations can help, philanthropy can help.
So what are the examples that we covered? Convening folks, being involved directly or indirectly. That can be with, providing some sort of matching grant or just helping administer those funds. We've seen examples of community foundations who are able to kind of manage the grant applications. And yeah.
My favorite is this last one on the screen, convene groups to disseminate and collect information about the report. Let's say you get the local foundation to invite all the area mayors and city council members to their offices. Maybe they have bagels and coffee, and then the nonprofits make their pitch so that everyone loves to hang out with foundation folks, right? So including politicians. So maybe the community foundation or the local private foundation can set up meetings or connections. If you have a funder that has good influence, use them, utilize them, take full advantage. So these are advocacy tricks of the trade. These are development tricks of the trade that can work to all of our advantage. Maybe one more. One of the questions that came up often was, can you use these for capital improvement projects? Collen, isn't that kind of everything you do? So the answer would be yes, not just in housing, but we've seen lots of examples of food banks buying new refrigerators or expanding their floor plan, daycare centers, childcare centers, or building new buildings and new floor. Laura, you probably have some examples of similar of training facilities and things like that where these.
Yeah, we have one that put a new roof on their job training center, but I didn't bring it up because it wasn't a workforce one necessarily.
Still exciting. So there are many, many examples. We're going to run out of time. So let me quickly go over some of the obvious, and maybe I'll warn our panelists here, if you can maybe take 30 seconds to give any summations, but the funds are available for nonprofits, recipient. You can partner with state and local governments. They are our allies and our friends, and they need to spend the money, and it makes as much sense or more sense to devote it to the organizations that are devoted to the community. And you have the tools and templates that will be made available. They're already available, but going to help you make sure it comes through. Any closing comments for folks? Tips, advice, so forth?
I would just say, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So ask.
Yeah, and just scrolling through the questions again, I just want to repeat, it's called state and local fiscal recovery funds because it's going to the state and local. States and localities are then making the decision on how they're giving out that funding. And that's what nonprofits are eligible for. So again, there's no application out there per se that is on Treasury. You have to go to your state officials, your local officials, and ask. They may have created their own template, etc. We've heard from our Goodwills too. Some of them may ask for additional reporting requirements than what they were initially asking for. So you have to be flexible. It's still bureaucracy, right? It's federal money. So you're going to have some level of reporting and flexibility along with that. But, to Colleen's point, if you're not asking for it, you're not going to get it.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'll say that there have been a lot of resources and a lot of stories and a lot of testimonials that show that it is very much possible to still secure these funds. And it's just a matter of taking basically the ingredients and putting them together to kind of get to that one document that shows your work, why these funds would help your organization, and the impact it can have. So it's definitely not too late. You have until December 31st to shape that ask.
Thank you. The bad news is there are no rules. The good news is there are no rules. We're a creative sector, so yeehaw. Full opportunity. This isn't the end of it. We, National Council of Nonprofits, will continue to develop our materials, and we're going to use your questions to help build out some more materials to answer more. We thank you. We'll get the goal. The plan is to get the recording, et cetera, out to you as quickly as possible. It's probably going to have to be tomorrow, but to the more than 1,400 folks who attended us live and the 100,000s who join us later, thank you. Please take advantage of this. This is created for you, and we want to make sure that your missions, your communities, will benefit from it. So thank you very much. Bye now.